So about 20 years ago, a book came out talking about the CEO of Southwest Airlines, Herb Kelleher. And Herb Kelleher was one of the first major CEOs in the country to come out vocally against the phrase, the customer is always right. I'm sure we've all heard that phrase before, the idea that you need to bend over backwards for your customers. The problem is this phrase has a detrimental effect on your employees. And so what Herb Kelleher realized is a single customer was causing so much problem with his employees and making his employees so unhappy that it was having a knock-on effect on the other customers that his employees were working with. So he determined that it was time to fire this customer, not employee, customer, and basically ban them from Southwest Airlines. And so he ran with this mantra. And what he did is he basically determined that there is a time when you need to stand with your employees and you need to start treating your employees like family. And if your employees are happy, then they will treat their customers better, and then your customers will be happy. Treat your employees like family, and then your employees will treat their customers like family. And this is a huge circular knock-on effect that leads to better business. And so because of that, Southwest quickly became one of the most, if not the most beloved airline in the country. They ended up serving more customers per employee than any other airline in the world. Is it in the world? Maybe probably just the United States. And basically, this is all because he threw out the phrase, the customer is always right. And so what is the problem with the phrase, the customer is always right? First of all, as I said, it makes employees unhappy. The other thing it does is it essentially subsidizes bad behavior. And I've spoken this before in capitalism-centric videos, that when you reward bad behavior, anything you reward, you will get more of. If you reward good behavior, you'll get more good behavior. If you reward bad behavior, on the other hand, you will get more bad behavior. So if you are rewarding the bad behavior of a customer, that will be a signal to other customers that they too will get rewarded by being bad customers. And so before you know it, you have nothing but bad customers, which of course leads to more bad employees. And that's just bad for business. So if I take a more personal approach to this, a more personal example, I umpired for almost 25 years. I have not umpired since the start of lockdowns. And what I noticed in the various leagues I've done a lot of leagues. I've done little leagues, I've done local leagues, junior Olympics, high school leagues, middle school leagues, travel ball, ASA, pony, U-Trip, less A is the last league I did. I've even done all the way up to college ball. And something I noticed with all these leagues is the worst leagues were the leagues that babied their rules, the leagues that did not defend the controversial calls that their umpires made. They didn't defend their controversial umpires. And so when it comes to fast pitch, there are a lot of controversial calls that can happen. There are a lot of technical rules, especially when it comes to pitching. And the higher level leagues, the better leagues, were the leagues that backed up their umpires who made these controversial calls. If you throw an illegal pitch in fast pitch, the penalty is a ball on the batter and all runners advanced one base. That is a huge penalty. That is huge. All runners advance one base. Runs will score off of that penalty. That is an insane penalty. So a lot of umpires are afraid to make these calls because of how controversial they are. So if you're doing a league such as high school, and in high school, you're not paid by an assigner. You're not paid by the league themselves. You are paid by the schools. So the schools are basically the direct customers. And so if you make a controversial call, such as an illegal pitch, a school will say, we don't like that umpire. We don't want to pay him anymore. So they'll tell the assigners, don't assign that umpire to any more of our games, or we will find a new assigner. And assigners will bend over to these schools and say, fine, we'll blacklist that umpire for you. So they will not defend their employees, which are the umpires. They will instead they will reward the behavior of the bad schools who don't want to deal with teaching their players the proper way to pitch and not get called on these illegal pitches. And this is where you'll have the lower quality schools that will never make it to any sort of high level competition. And this is also where you will end up with nothing but bad umpires, because the good umpires who call these controversial calls, well, they're not working the high school games anymore. They've moved on. They only do junior Olympic or high school or travel ball or college level ball at this point, because they can't do high school because the high school assigners won't hire them anymore. So these leagues that will only have the bad umpires will only happen to have nothing but bad umpires. So the only umpires that are still around in high school are bad umpires. At least that's where it is around where I am in New Jersey. Now that's a personal example. Let's talk about a more broad example that the average person can understand, and let's talk about police officers, police associations, police departments. And so what we have is, first of all, let me say that I am not a staunch defender of the police. I am right-wing. As a right-wing person, that means I am liberal, because liberalism is right-wing ideology. Liberalism, of course, being individual liberty. People who are individualists are inherently against authority. So as a right-wing person, I am very skeptical of any sort of authority because I believe in individualism. Now, left-wing ideology is that of authoritarianism. But the left wing in the last few years have been defunding and basically throwing their police departments under the bus. They do it for political reasons, not for authoritarian versus individual reasons. And I've explained this in a previous video where I spoke about how libertarians do the work of socialists and communists. That's a previous video. If you want to hear more of that, you can talk about that. So I'm not a die-hard defend the blue no matter what guy. But at the same time, as an individualist, I'm not a ACAB guy either. I don't believe the ideals of all cops are bastards. I think majority of cops are good cops. But I don't think all cops are perfect either. You show me a bad cop, you show me a specific cop, not on a broad spectrum, and I will stand with you to fight against bad cops. Obviously, I'm not a supporter of police unions. I'm not a supporter of any federal state, public sector unions in the first place. I think they all need to go away. But let's talk about defunding cops. And so these left-wing cities have defunded and thrown all their cops under the bus. And so when you do that, you've basically rewarded the bad behavior of their criminals in those districts. So someone like George Floyd. George Floyd is a criminal who was committing a crime when he died. Now, I'm not saying that Derek Chauvin was a good cop. All signs show that him being a bad cop as well. But he didn't kill George Floyd. But that's another topic. George Floyd, bad person. But these departments these districts have defended criminals. And so they're rewarding criminals, not prosecuting criminals. And so now crime is going up in those areas. And because the good cops are not being defended in these areas, the good cops are leaving, to the point where the same thing that I talked about with the umpiring, where the good umpires have left, the good cops have also left. At this point, if you work in a Democrat city, I'm sorry, NYPD, the way I see it is, if you're on the NYPD and you are still standing with the NYPD, you're still working there and you haven't fled the NYPD to work in a district, a right-wing district, a Republican district that will actually support you defending the laws and defending your constituents, chances are you're probably a bad cop at this point. If you are working for Democrats as a cop in a Democrat district, chances are you're one of the last remaining bad cops. You're a bad cop because good cops have left. So the only people still around, the only cops that will work in a bad district, chances are bad cops. And that's a knock-on effect. That is a chilling effect of what happens when you do not defend your good employees. The only people who will remain are your bad employees because your good employees have left for greener pastures. And so that's probably something that you can understand. Now, defending employees is not a black and white issue. As I already said, there are definitely bad cops. There are definitely bad employees. There are bad umpires. As I said, the bad umpires still work the high school games. The bad cops still work for the NYPD. Now, we want to take a lower temperature example. We can talk about Netflix. Now, Netflix is under heat right now for the past few weeks because they published Dave Chappelle's recent special. And Dave Chappelle is a right-wing turfer, blah, 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 even though he is a all cops are bastards kind of black supremacist, Muslim, super left-wing guy. Anyone to the right of Mao Zedong at this point is right wing, or anyone to the right of Hillary Clinton is right wing. But so what happens here? So who's protesting against Dave Chappelle in this Netflix thing? It's not the customers. The majority of customers are supporting Netflix in this. The majority of customers are giving Netflix money to see this special. Who's walking out and protesting in front of Netflix this week? It's the employees of Netflix. About 24 employees of Netflix are staged a walkout and they're protesting in front of Netflix. Now, should Netflix be bending over backwards to stand with their family of employees? Well, if you go with the idea that employees are family, you need to defend them, then yeah. But like I said, it's not black or white. Just as how you need to know where to draw the line of defending your customers, the same thing goes for employees. You need to be able to know where you draw the line and you stop defending your employees. And where is that line? It's actually really simple. The line is where it affects your business. Now, Herb Kelleher spoke about Southwest because he needed to draw the line on where defending a customer would affect your business. The same thing goes for defending employees. The CEO of Netflix, I can't remember his name, wrote a memo a few days ago about where he needed to speak to his employees and the world with sympathy about understanding blah, 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 blah. No, irrelevant. You do not speak with sympathy. Irrelevant. As a business, you have one job. Your business serves one purpose: to make money. Herb Kelleher defended his employees in Southwest not because he inherently cares about his employees, but because he understood about making money. And defending his employees was, in that specific situation, was making his company more money. Defending employees at Netflix against Dave Chappelle is not making money. It's actually throwing money away. And so this is something we've seen a lot when it comes to woke employees. When you have woke employees, you cannot defend these employees against your customers because these woke employees are not making your company money. Basically, when it comes to any employee, whether they're woke or not, it's a simple. It is a plus or minus game. If having an employee on staff is giving you net profits, then they are a good employee to have. But the moment having that employee on staff reduces your profits, where it's having that employee on staff is a net negative on your profits, it is time to cut those employees loose. And when it comes to woke employees, it is almost always a negative effect. And when it comes to these woke departments, you have an entire department of woke employees, cut the entire department. You need to know where the line is drawn. And the line is drawn on the ledger. When the ledger turns from black to red, that's when you start cutting people. That's where you need to fire entire departments. Every single employee that staged the walkout against Dave Chappelle should be fired. It's that simple. So the customer is not always right, but the employee is not always right either. It is a fine line. In fact, it's not actually a fine line. It is a specific line. You know exactly where it is, and it's on the ledger. Anyways, peace out, guys. I'll see you next time.